Welcome to On Stage, the Art of Candid Moment. This exhibit invites This exhibit invites you to consider a question that has followed humanity across centuries. What does it mean to be seen when you aren't performing? Or are we always performing even when no one's watching? Through paintings, prints, photographs, and ceramics captured throughout history, I dive into how artists have captured the unguarded, the intimate, and the real, and what those moments reveal about societal structures, class dynamics, vanity, identity, public performance, and the harmony of the private and the public. I would like to begin in ancient Greece, emphasizing that candid moments have always been foundational to the human experience. This Athenian sword jar, crafted around 510 BC, uses black figure technique to create clay silhouettes capturing people dancing, musicians playing, and a dichotomous movement in the energy of the scene. The scene is fluid, spiritual, and so natural. In a period filled with mythology and gods, this artwork is so ordinary. Just people moving together in a moment of shared joy. Starting with this allows the public to see that the impulse to capture candid, everyday life is not a modern idea. It is ancient and fundamentally human. And what may seem as a sharp contrast to the previous piece of artwork, this piece adds another perspective to the idea of candidness, as it can be captured even in portraits which are commonly posed. Kitagawa Utamaro's woodblock print draws us into a deeply personal and private scene in Japanese culture, a woman having the nape of her neck shaved in preparation for the day. Part of the celebrated Elegant Five Needled Pine series, this work belongs to a genre called binja, quite literally meaning pictures of beautiful women, which documented the intimate daily rituals of women's lives. Notice that this intimacy is being observed and recorded by an artist and preserved for an audience. As a viewer, it almost seems like we aren't supposed to see this scene. Portraits are inherently framed and posed, but this candid moment is framed in a different way. Since these characters aren't posing, it blends the lines between a posed public appearance and the private preparation for it. Again, I invite you to consider when viewing this piece and the following pieces. Are we ever not performing? Moving on, we stay in that private space the previous piece presented, but now class is entering the frame. Johannes Vermeer's Woman with a Pearl Necklace captures a Dutch noblewoman alone, staring into her reflection, adjusting her pearl necklace before she enters the public. The room is deliberately emptied and filled with shadows, so nothing competes with the viewer's focus on her actions and expression. She is preparing a performance of status and purity, the pearl is a symbol of refined and high-class womanhood. The irony presents itself as Vermeer catches her before the performance begins. The intimacy of seeing her actively put herself together for her public self in a room with no grand architecture, servants, or elaborate decor could imply that she is constructing a class identity, not simply inhabiting one. This is what candidness does. It reveals how class and gender structures don't just survive in wealth, but are also meticulously constructed into one's appearance. This piece is similar to the last piece, but features more vibrant colors and a well-lit atmosphere. In this piece, which is a part of a series representing the five senses, sight becomes the subject itself. Similar to the Japanese piece, she is partially in a public mode as others are in the room. The woman sits in her vanity, attended to by another woman, while in the background a man peers through a telescope, looking at something the viewer cannot see. The act of seeing is layered throughout the painting. Both the mirror and the telescope are instruments of observation, but one is looking inward and the other outward. The woman looking at herself in the mirror and the boy looking outside could be used to illustrate the obsession with appearance that society expected of women in this period. It introduces the tension between the male gaze and the female ritual that is present throughout the exhibit. What's enticing to me is, why is the capturing of women in private so compelling? Does it serve to demystify women? Is that a progressive or a regressive idea? The demystification could absolutely be read as progressive, as it almost humanizes women who are historically objectified. However, the artists doing the capturing are almost entirely men, so the demystification isn't really on the woman's terms. It's the male gaze deciding that the private can now be public. I think that question offers an interesting perspective on the dichotomy of candid artwork. As established in previous works, capturing the private, particularly beauty rituals, compose a moral question, which is where the allegory of vanity comes into play. This piece features a woman at the center of the canvas as the only bright lit and glowing figure in a dark background with dark figures. Three figures at different ages in the scene serve as a reminder to the viewer that beauty is temporary. That is, how society views beauty, and that the performance of an elegant, put-together self will always compete with time. These Dutch paintings were meant to illustrate exactly that in this time. warning people not to become too attached to appearances, material things, or the version of yourself you present to others. The young boy appears as the only joyful-looking figure here, and unsurprisingly is the only person unobsessed with his appearance. It's important to note that his gender also plays a role into this, as young girls in this time period were conditioned to start worrying about their looks at a young age. Nonetheless, this painting shows how much more meaning and power a candid photo can hold compared to a posed one. At this point, I would like to enter into more modern pieces with Nighthawks by Edward Hopper. This painting takes place in a late-night diner in New York City at the time of a national mood of fear and anxiety following U.S. entering World War I after Pearl Harbor. Despite a fair number of people in the diner, everyone sits in solitude, not touching, speaking, or connecting. With the man alone at the counter and the couple sitting in silence, Hopper exposes profound loneliness that can exist even in a crowded city. The candid moment here is not warm or intimate, and I think it is one of the only few pieces in this exhibition that isn't a performance. The candidness of this piece allegorizes human defeat in the face of pain and even death, when all that is left is being alone together. Next, we have my personal favorite, Andy Warhol, who is definitely a strange man, but really cool. I love him. His photography focuses on the collision of celebrities, class, and the purposeful candid photograph. These snapshots, taken across New York in the late 20th century, were Warhol's attempt to catch socialites when their guards were down, keeping them on the stage that they are on when they are seen in public. I really enjoy how the Alcor Museum called this his social media, and it shows that Warhol was trying to convey the fact that public figures are basically always performing. Celebrities this day and age are constantly being followed around by paparazzi. Perhaps Warhol was paparazzi at his own time, and it's like well privileged way, of course, because he's a celebrity himself. But what society knows now with the advent of social media is that the most revealing images are the ones taken between the performances. In a culture obsessed with idolization and consumption, the candid photo here becomes an act of puncturing a fabulous facade. These photos, also taken in New York and other cities, are the deeply personal work of Nan Goldin. To give justice to the intimacy of her life she shared with us, I would like to share what she says about her work. She says, quote, "My work has been about recording making a recording of my life that no one could revise," end quote. The Ballad of Sexual Dependency is a decade-long visual diary composed of 700 photographs documenting love, loss, violence, joy, addiction, and survival. Goldin described it as a shared diary, a way of asserting control over her own story, and a way for people to see the saddest and happiest parts of their lives represented in such an unfiltered way. As an activist during the AIDS crisis and then the opioids crisis, her work is a candid moment as an act of resistance towards the taboo. The idea of a diary meant to be read is ironic, but there is no staging performance for an outside audience in these photographs, suggesting that performance and reality can be interrelated. The viewer is pushed to get into the headspace of Goldin and take themselves on a journey that embraces the fact that performance doesn't have to be contingent on what we think the audience wants to see. Rather, being completely and unapologetically ourselves is so much more interesting and comforting to audiences. To close out this exhibit, I end with the most contemporary piece. Okay, if you want to find more, Farah's Sami's general behavior is a vibrant, layered collage drawn from nearly a decade of photography exploring multiculturalism, gender, and consumerism through high contrast, joyful, complicated images. The exhibit began with the clay silhouettes on an ancient jar. It ends with the very popular modern day digital layering. I myself am a huge collager, so I actually really like this piece, and I very much suggest that you watch it yourself. Digital collages are images that overlay each other, so they create a conversation between cultures and identities. Farah uses this layering intentionally as a symbol of harmony across difference, both privately and publicly. I wanted to end with an interactive piece because it invites you to not just look, but to really engage, which is ultimately what this entire exhibit has asked of you. Every one of these pieces was meant to make you not just observe the candid moment, but to recognize yourself inside it and connect with it in your own meaningful way. Candid photography is a way of connecting us all, highlighting our similarities and differences and embracing those. Thank you so much for watching.